Alright friends, so the purpose of this video is to articulate the very important ways in which we draw eyes, noses, and mouths that we could improve on, for sure. So one thing I never want to see is an eye that has like a tiny pupil in it. Not like that. Most eyes, I don't know why that one's crossed out, that one's fine. But the eyes we're looking at, people I think get a little bit worked up about making them look symmetrical. It just takes a little bit of practice because you have eyes on both sides. You want to just keep them generally the same size. But a big thing I think people mistakenly do is this thing where they put the pupil right in the center and they make it tiny, and that's not what a real eye looks like. Usually an eye will take up almost all of the eyeball. Right? They call that part the iris. And the pupil is never like a tiny little dot in the middle, pretty rarely. It's usually a circle that takes up almost all of the middle. And then there's a little highlight spot right in the middle. Sometimes that highlight might be a little bit more skewed, like a little half moon. Either way, it exists. This is like a robot. This is like a human. And then what I like to do is draw a little shadow line at the top of that iris. And then I will fill in the little lines, depending on how much of that you can actually see in your image of what you're recreating. Then I try to keep some visible highlights in there, like in this side. It's a little bit lighter on that side than it is on this side. Okay, and then I wouldn't go into some people too will try to draw like this little pupil, whatever this is called, the tear duct, sorry, not the pupil. I think it's okay to include that, but I wouldn't go overboard trying to make it look really realistic. Oftentimes it's super small and imperceptible to our viewers. So it can be faint. I wouldn't go crazy with it, but it does exist, so include it. Okay, super faint. Cool. And then you can draw even lighter, continuing a shadow in that eyeball, because a shadow does fall from the eyelid onto that eyeball. But it's a darker shadow in the iris because the iris itself is full of pigment, either brown or blue or green. It's darker than the white of your eye, right? Because the white of your eye is essentially pretty white. So that shadow is going to be lighter. And obviously, if I weren't working with pen and I were working with pencil, you would see that as just a super light line. Okay, so that would be a tiny little light gray shadow. That would be a darker shadow. Okay, then for drawing noses, I see people do all kinds of things with noses. I see, people doing it like that, people doing it like this. People are generally pretty freaked out by drawing a nose. It can be simplified. So I would draw first your little guideline of a circle. Because if you touch your nose right now, squeeze it, there's like a tiny little ball of cartilage on the inside of your nose. Okay, and then you can do the phalanges down here, and the shape of that can be wider like I drew here, or it can be a little bit more narrow, depending on how wide you want your nose to look. And this type of phalange is showing up kind of higher than the bottom of the ball of the nose, right? These are a little bit higher. That way you're not seeing the nostrils as much as you would on, say, this one. For this one, draw the ball of the nose, and then I draw my lines are a little bit lower down here. And then I fill in where the nostrils would be. So there's nostrils that aren't visible, right? You're barely seeing nostril on that. Okay, it's all about those phalanges. And then you can maybe draw in a little bit of shadow for the tip of the nose, or for the top of the rounded ball in the nose. Okay, and for this one, these are down or up a little bit higher, almost level, and then you draw in the nostrils. This one we don't see as much. It's a little bit more if you're looking up from somebody, and typically it's not something that photographers choose people with this kind of facial shape. The phalanges are down lower, and we can see up the nostril a little bit. And then we can add in that shadow. Okay, so that circle, that ball, that's just a guideline. So you would erase that. Okay, then for drawing mouths, some things I see and never want to see are things like this. That's not what a mouth looks like. That's what a cartoon mouth looks like. And then people will try to be a little bit more realistic and they'll draw each individual tooth. That is also not really going to convey something that looks accurate. If you're looking at a mouth of somebody who's posing or smiling for the camera, or just looking casual, not smiling, not doing a cheesy smile, you can really only see, if their mouth is open, the edges of the teeth on the side of the front teeth and the front teeth, depending on how wide open their mouth is. But I've just basically here alluded to the idea that there are some teeth there. And then I make these corners dark, and then I'm creating the upper lip. So the way you would draw that, you do your little hills, and then the little hills on top of that for the top lip, and then the little parentheses on its side for the bottom lip. If you want to show some teeth, I would go in and make a corner. I would come in and make the top of the lip, top of the bottom lip, and then maybe there's a faint line for where the gap in the teeth is, depending on whether you have a big gap tooth or not. Okay, this is just gentle shading. Pretty simple stuff. All right, have fun getting to work.